All right, how's everybody doing? So, welcome to the Unknown Unknowns podcast. This is episode 6. You may be, if you're a faithful listener, which I hope you are, and if you are, I appreciate it greatly. If you are a faithful listener, you may be wondering where I've been, where I went the, last week and a half or however long it's been since I've posted. I was sick. And so I, like many other people, got the flu or some kind of flu-like symptoms, was severely down for a little while, but now I'm back, and so is Mimu. She's back too, getting her camera time, because she's a fancy girl who needs her camera time, and may get Woolly Bear to join us, I don't know. But the other thing is this past weekend, I traveled to South Louisiana. I went home. I brought my camera equipment with me to film a podcast there, I was going to go down to Bayou and do it from one of the wharfs or docks, like a miniature pier. She's scratching on albums, which is very distracting. So I was going to broadcast from one of the docks, but the wind was blowing like 400 miles an hour, which is very uncommon for that area unless there's a hurricane. And so I did not film. I decided not to. I figured it was going to ruin the sound. And so I just decided to wait until I got back to Alabama. I did hit one milestone. I got one scratching on albums. Now I got one scratching on the camera. So if the camera's moving, it's because of a cat. Okay? So I did accomplish one milestone. I performed for the first time in my home state. That's right. From Louisiana, born and bred, never, ever did comedy there. Okay? Very concerned about whether or not it was going to go over well. And it did. It went over really well. I was very, very surprised that people were receptive to my material, just because, sometimes people can be a little funny whenever you're going into, oh gosh. I have a cat that is continuously moving my tripod because he decides that he needs to make it his. So that's why the tripod's moving. I'm just going to leave it because this is something that's happening in the moment. But it was really well received. I think even, like performing in New Orleans, that's why I performed at the Holland Wolf. The thing is even though it is South Louisiana, New Orleans is South Louisiana, I still talk completely different than everyone from New Orleans. And so whenever I started to talk, everybody kind of turned and was, this guy is, kind of just looking like this guy is not from here. And then, I have my joke where I say I'm from South Louisiana, and then it's like, no, I'm not from South, I'm like from way South, and then everybody was kind of like, oh, he's one of those people, so went over really, really well. Hope to go back soon and perform there soon. I was at the Holland Wolf. If you've ever been there, if you haven't been there, definitely check it out. They have some really cool concerts there, really cool bar just to hang out, in downtown New Orleans. And so definitely make it a stop if you ever make it out that way. So that's one update in comedy. Another update in comedy is I did Comedy Reflux the 1st of February at Shenanigans Comedy Theater here in Huntsville, Alabama. It went really, really well. I did really good. It's comedy and improv mixed. So you do your comedy set and then the improv troupe comes up and they act out your set, and it's a really fun, good time. If he's watching, Mr. Jesse Pollard had a performance to end all other performances. I don't know if he can ever top that crab that he did. It was hilarious. It had people in stitches. It was really, really great. And of course, like I say, I went home. Coming up, I have Laughing Skull next week, the 18th. So that is going to be an open mic, but it's a booked open mic. If you've never been to the Laughing Skull in Atlanta for an open mic, you got to pay, but it is worth it because it is hilarious. Everybody brings their A game. It's really awesome. And then Saturday, February 22nd, I have the Green Room in Tracy City, Tennessee. I've never been there before. Really anxious to go to that place. Sent a pretty crazy image for the poster. As soon as I get the poster, I'm going to be putting it up on my page and other social media. So if you're in that area, definitely come check me out. It'd be awesome. And I have another first. Okay? So I have a first. And so what I have is I have listener feedback. All right? And the listener feedback is more cats messing with the camera. Not quite. No, so I did. I had one of my listeners reach out to me and ask me if I ever thank myself. Do I ever thank myself for the things I do? And the answer was no. I don't know many people that say thank you to themselves. And this person consciously says thank you to themselves. And, so they listen to the podcast or snippets of the podcast, and they heard me talking about motivators and things to keep you engaged and involved and moving forward, and anything that puts one foot in front of the other. And they said one of their motivators, one of the things that keeps them driven, keeps them going, is thanking themselves. So not just saying thank you, but saying thank you to their past self and saying thank you to their future self, or their future self saying, thank you to their present and past self. And so we had a pretty extensive conversation about this concept of thanking yourself, because I said, I didn't formally come out and physically say thank you to me for the things I do, okay, but I've thought about it and listened to it, and over the past few weeks, just kind of kicked around the concept in my head of really what does it mean to say thank you to yourself. Okay, so I guess maybe today is a day that it really hit. Was right now my present and past self is super pissed at my future self, because some things out of your control. So being sick, wanting to travel, those things are kind of out of my control. But things that are in my control is, like last night, I could have filmed this last night and I didn't. I chose to film it tonight, which means I'm going to be up later doing the edit, because I want to be able to post tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning. I want to be able to post tomorrow morning. And so, I'm irritated with my future self because my future self didn't prepare. And another thing is it's today's the 10th. Is it the 10th today? Yeah, today's the 10th or the 11th. Yeah, today's the 11th. Okay, so February 11th. It's February 11th, and I still haven't sent out all of my avails for March and April. Okay, so as of right now, I'm pretty irritated with future self, and I'm also irritated with present self. Now, that being said, I've also done something today that I'm already saying thank you to my future self, because my past self experienced enough bullshit that my present self decided today that I was going to live more minimalist. Okay. And so, I don't know if you even, like, I don't know if you know what that, like, I'm not saying get rid of all possessions or anything, but I made a conscious decision from past self living a certain way and experiencing things a certain way to where I decided that I am going to influence my present self, which is me today. I am going to influence present self to make sure future self has nothing they value when I need to leave a particular situation. So am I going to be able to do that for every situation? No, of course not. So we all value different things. We all have things, possessions, memories, these different things that no matter what, we can't leave behind. Like, I have to have that, but today I had certain possessions in an area where I do not want to be, and I removed those items. And so I can already thank my future self, because by the time my present self needs to leave that situation, my future self will just be able to leave. I'm working towards, and so just a little bit of a history about me is I made a living on my creativity. So I'm an artist. I paint, I sculpt, I tattoo. I've been tattooing for 20 plus years, and so for a pretty extended amount of time, I made a living on my talent. I made a living creating. I made a living by influencing and sharing and doing all these things just with what I have in my heart and what I have in my brain, which is my talent. And right now I'm locked into a little cell of death. I call it a little cell of death. I don't know how many people out there work in a cubicle. Whoever designs cubicles, I guarantee they design rooms that create clinical depression. No one should be locked in a freaking cubicle for 8 hours a day, every day. And that's where I'm at right now. That's where I'm at in life, but I got to hear Oprah speak, and I've brought that up before, and she said you got to do what you got to do until you can do what you want to do. And that's what I'm doing right now. And that's what I keep telling future self. That's what present self keeps telling future self. And that's what past self keeps telling present self. And man, present self and future self are dealing with it, but they don't want to deal with it. Because present self and future self wants to get back to where past self was making a living on creativity. And that's where a lot of the comedy fits in. It's such a cool feeling. Myself and one of the local comics in the area, Miss Kim Wilson, we were talking today of how rewarding it is, to be able to use your words to, bring yourself enjoyment from a crowd, because we were talking about how much the crowd influences, our comedy. I really try to disconnect myself from the crowd, but it's very hard. Myself, I feed off the crowd. I like whenever the crowd is there. I like whenever the crowd is having a good time. Their good time makes me have a better time, and I feel like that I'm delivering a product that is making it worth their time to be there. Because no matter what, they're taking time out of their day to share with me, and it means a lot. And it's the same thing whenever I used to tattoo. Somebody was trusting me enough to change their life forever. You know, I mean, you can get tattoos removed and stuff and all, but you still have that memory. Even if you get it removed, you have that memory. Even if you get it covered up, you still have that memory of that tattoo. You know, all my tattoos, I remember all of them, when I got them, what I was doing, where I was at, you know, every little detail I remember. And so for somebody to make you that part of their life, it really, really changes your outlook as far as how you make a living and what part you play in the world. And so, like right now, you know, I find myself in my little cell of death. Like that's what I call it. And you know, you got to figure I'm from down the bayou. I started welding when I was like 12 years old. You know, I hit 17. I started as a welder's helper. You know, 2 years later, I was welding. 1 year after that, I was fitting, and I was building offshore equipment and everything else while I was going to school, getting my degree. And, you know, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about hard work. I learned a lot about how you can find yourself in a position that you never thought you would be in, and you do everything you can to escape it. And I did. I escaped it. I escaped it for over a decade and was able to make that living, you know, with art. I mean, just with ideas and with talent. You know, a lot of people compare a tattoo artist to their therapist because, you know, I got to hear all these amazing stories, and some were silly, you know, silly stories. And, you know, I got to see wives cheat on husbands, husband cheats on wives, one guy coming by with one girl one day and 2 days later coming by with another girl and, you know, pulling me aside going, man, you going to say anything? And my response is, I'm not going to mess with my money. You know, I had those experiences, and it was awesome, you know. And my shop was on the parade route, and it was Mardi Gras. It's about Mardi Gras time right now. First parades rolled this Friday in my hometown, you know. And so that being on that parade route, you get to see all different kinds of life. You know, you get to meet all different kinds of people, and you know, they come, they enjoy your space, you share your space with them, and you know, you get to experience like happiness, you know, true happiness. And then, you know, things happen that are out of your control, you know. So my shop had to go away. My shop had to go away because there was natural disaster, there was storms and things of that nature that really put, you know, devastation into the area. And then, you know, there was not natural disaster. It was Deepwater Horizon, which was the offshore platform that dumped 300,000 barrels of oil into the Gulf. You know, and the government came in, they shut down all offshore drilling. And that's what my hometown survives on, is offshore drilling, you know. And so I really started to watch, you know, things go downhill, and I started to watch, you know, different areas of my life suffer. And I made a conscious effort to work more and more hours, work harder, and it just was not paying off. The effort was not reaping the reward. I was starting to hate it. And so I decided to make the change. I made the change. I moved away from South Louisiana. I moved to North Alabama into the Huntsville area where, you know, it's growing. You know, after the first year here, I started to, you know, to hear there was a comedy scene. Whenever I was back home, I'm not even 100% sure. I can't really say that there was no comedy scene back home because I hadn't even checked into it, but I was so preoccupied with running my business. You know, whenever you run a business, you work 24 hours a day. You don't stop, you know. And so being preoccupied with my shop, I didn't know if there was a comedy scene. And plus I work nights, and comedy happens at nights, and tattoos happens at night, you know? And so when I got to Huntsville and I was working a regular job, that window for, you know, that opportunity, that window opened. And, you know, so after being here for a year, I had set a goal. You know, I told that future self, before you make before you make it to the end of, you know, that this year, you're going to get on stage and you're at least going to try it. And, you know, future self kept coming up with excuses. You know, present self kept coming up with excuses. And then we have a thing, I work in manufacturing right now, and we have a thing in manufacturing called just do it. And I decided to just do it. And that's what I did. And I failed horribly. You know, a lot like a tattoo, I'll never, ever forget that first time on stage. But man, I was hooked. You know, I was determined. I was, you know, going to make my past self happy. That past self pushed future self past the excuses. You know, and future self and past self culminated on present self and made present self get on stage. It's I don't know if I necessarily believe in alternate universes. You know, this same exact scene is happening somewhere else. You know, in some kind of bend or wave of time. I don't know if that's necessarily a thing. Maybe it is. I have no idea. I think I'm too stupid whenever it comes to something like that. But I know that no matter what, our memories are still alive. You know, so is that the alternate universe? Is, you know, that fantasy that you know, because they have some people, you know, they'll tell themselves the same lie so many times that they end up believing it. You know, so does their, you know, past become that altered universe, that bend in time, because they've changed the program in their mind to say, you know, oh no, that was, you know, the way I remember it. And so I'm not sure if I would have never took that step. I often wonder if I would have ever took that step. You know, I'm really glad I took that step, because now I'm doing this. I have another creative outlet outside of my little cube of death, my little cubicle of death. I need to look up who invented cubicles and go piss on that dude's grave. Or if he's still alive, go piss on his foot. Because they're a horrible place. They're a horrible place to be. You want to talk about something that kills creativity? You know what kills creativity? A cubicle. A cubicle kills creativity. It's gray and white. Man, two of the most cheerful colors you can have in your life. Gray and white. You know, not even black and white, not cut and dry. Gray and white. You know, so we're gonna give you a little bit of a tone, and it's a mix of gray. Don't get me wrong. It's kind of a dark gray cabinet with a light gray countertop. You know, they really complement each other. You know, one slightly cool, one slightly warm, as far as tone goes. But the white, oh man, that white, stark white. I mean, nothing whiter, nothing cleaner, you know, to where you can see every little bit of dust and dirt, and that way you get told daily, or weekly or monthly or way too many damn times to clean the desk. Why don't you clean your desk? Why don't you clean your desk? It doesn't look professional. Why don't you clean your desk? And every time I hear clean your desk, all I really hear is die in this little cell a little more. Let us take a little bit more of your soul. And man, that's where I'm at. I cannot not wait until the day comes to where I can make a living on my creativity again. And I'm not asking to be rich and famous and all these things. It would, I don't know if it would be a nice trade-off. I've never lived that life. I have no idea. All I want to be able to do is pay my bills. Yeah, pay my bills. Maybe buy a couple things. Maybe buy a little bit nicer of a camera, but this camera's working just fine. Maybe buy some little, a little bit nicer microphones, but I'm borrowing microphones that are working just great. But as of right now, I'm going to keep doing what I got to do until I can do what I want to do. And if you've listened to this point, I really do appreciate it. I I don't know if y'all watched it, but on my YouTube channel, I released it's called Cousin Elmer. Cousin Elmer Meets Two Big Feet, I think it's called. It's one of my characters that I thought of at work just to keep a distraction from my little cubicle of death. And so it's a funny little character. He's got, the typical redneck accent, and it's loosely based on one of my coworkers, his imaginary cousin that I just made up in my head. And so I'm going to be releasing another one of those soon. I don't know if I'm going to release it tomorrow or Thursday, but it's because I'm still kind of playing around with some of the terminology I want to use in the little skit. But it's going to be some little skits that I release every now and again. I got several of them coming out. That's what I do to entertain myself throughout the day. Whenever I feel like ripping every hair out of my head, is I come up with these little characters, and I try and lighten the mood in my area between myself and my coworkers, in between cleaning our desk. And so be on the lookout for that. More listener feedback, man. It was so awesome to get listener feedback, because it showed me that, hey, maybe I'm doing something good here. I don't even know. And then I listened to another podcast this week, and they said on there, it was like, I'm so tired of these BS self-help podcasts and all this. I don't want anybody to think of this as a self-help podcast. Really and truly, I'm trying to talk about my journey and the things that help me and the things that I do that I feel add value to what I'm trying to accomplish. I work for myself, when it comes to comedy. Right now, I'm working for a company. And I can tell you right now, if I put even 10% of the effort into myself that I put into that company, I'm going to be successful. I ran a tattoo shop for over a decade. I put everything I had into it, and I paid all of my bills for over a decade strictly on my talent. And that's the same thing I plan to do moving forward, is put everything into myself and get to where I'm paying my bills through talent, creativity, writing, performing, art. I brought paints and everything with me to Louisiana, but again, the weather was not kind at all. Very, very windy. I don't know if you've ever tried to paint next to a waterway while the wind was blowing. Your canvas ends up in the bayou. Okay? And so painting was not successful. But that doesn't mean that I'm not going to put more effort into painting, making t-shirts. I made this BoudreauxComedy.com hoodie. I made BoudreauxComedy.com shirts. Need a little work on some of the screen printing stuff. Still figuring it out. I've done a lot of screen printing, but I'm rusty. It's been a while, and so I'm figuring some things out. But that's what you do in life. That's what you do. You just figure stuff out, make successful, and keep moving until you accomplish your goals. And that's what I plan to do. And so now I feel like I'm starting to babble right here at the end. If you're still listening, listener feedback, I welcome it. Boudreaux Comedy, BOODRO Comedy at gmail.com. Please reach out. I would love to hear from you. This is going to drop tomorrow. Let's see what's coming up. I told y'all what's coming up. I got Laughing Skull. So if you're in Laughing Skull on the 18th, come on in. It's awesome time. Like I say, you got to pay to get in there, but it's an awesome time. And then the 22nd, if you find yourself in Tracy City, Tennessee, the Green Room, that seems like it's going to be a really awesome show. I don't know the name of the show. I apologize. As soon as I get the flyer, I'm going to post it. And then I got something big happening. The end of next month, the end of March, I'll be at North Carolina Comedy Festival, and so I'm gonna be pushing that as I get information on that. I'm gonna be pushing that real hard. Super excited! I can't wait for that. If anybody from North Carolina is listening to this in the Greensboro area, I would definitely be willing to trade a couple tattoos for a sofa for a few days. And so I'm going to be putting those feelers out there. Hopefully I don't end up tattooing a psychopath that likes to kill redheads with a funny accent. Thank y'all for listening. If you're still listening, Boudreaux Comedy on all social media. That's BOODRO Comedy on all social media. And I'll see y'all next week. The unknown.